Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, I'm Justin Daniels. I am a shareholder and corporate M&A and tech transaction lawyer at the law firm Baker Donaldson, advising companies in the deployment and scaling of technology. Since data is critical to every transaction, I help clients make informed business decisions while managing data privacy and cybersecurity risk. And when needed, I lead the legal cyber data breach response brigade.
And this episode is brought to you by, that was very loud, Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there is greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com.
Well, spring break seems like a distant memory.
It really does, because since then, this is day 3, and I've had 9 to 5 meetings straight. I'm back in the swing of meetings.
Yes, you are.
No more trees.
No more.
No.
Right.
Really lovely.
As Basil would say.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So today, our guest is literally the only person who could get me to dress up as a pirate with a hat and come speak to an audience. And if you don't believe me, check out my LinkedIn this week, because I posted the first minute and 45 seconds of my video. And so with that, I would like to introduce Charlotte Baker, who is the CEO of Digital Hands, a cybersecurity service provider that has won numerous industry awards, the most recent in 2023 as Most Innovative MSSP at CyberDefenseCon and Inc's Power Partner for Privacy and Security. With 100% US-based delivery, clients experience unparalleled speed and detection and response. And let me add, Digital Hands, get there first. Charlotte, how are you?
Hi there. It's a pleasure to be with you both today.
That's really fun.
Well,
You could be their spokesperson.
I know a little bit about this company, as we'll soon learn.
Okay. Well, Charlotte, we always ask, how did people find their way to their current role? And so if you can take us on your career journey, we would greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Wow. My career journey started with a lot of large companies in sales and marketing technology companies primarily. And over the course of time, I think the catalyst for me moving into the entrepreneurial world was a stint with Microsoft as a product manager for FoxPro, a database. And it was back in some of the earlier heydays of Microsoft when the company was still on that entrepreneurial cusp. And I think that we only had 24 buildings out in Redmond. And I really got to see examples of creation, doing things roughly right, inspiring whiteboard sessions. And I said, one day I want to do that. From that stint, it took me about 5 years, and with stints in the institutional fixed income market, learning about the debt and equity markets, a stint in mergers and acquisitions and strategic planning. And long and the short of it is this particular company is one. It's not my first, but it's one that I've been with for about 20 years now. And every year, we reevaluate where we are, where the products are going, if not, quarterly. And what I find is every 4 years, this has become a different company. So it's like 20 years having 5 different startups pursuing a different part of the journey. So I've been here about 20 years, co-founder. This company has a passion and a mission for something that's near and dear to my heart, that is protecting from threats. And we have a fundamental belief that every company has the right to operate their business free from the threat of fraud, free from the threat of brand damage, and free from extortion.
Well, congratulations on nearly or over, I guess, 2 decades in business. So many businesses fail after the first 5 years. To be able to get to 5, 10, 15, and 20 and beyond is truly an amazing accomplishment.
Well, thank you. That's one of our people will ask me, what makes you different in this industry? Well, one of it is the tenure. One of the differentiators. A lot of companies in this space have been created in the last 5 years. We have highly tenured, incredibly smart people that have celebrated themselves their 5, 10, and 15, some of them 18-year anniversaries with us. And so that tenure really counts when you can say you remember when this industry was all about performance and availability and just keeping the IT assets up and running. And now it's critical thinking and content creation and dealing with privacy laws and dealing with strategy. And so it's been a fun ride. It continues to be fun. And we're just really fortunate to have the clients that we have that trust us with their strategy, their data, and to be their trusted partner.
Speaking of uniqueness, what is it that makes Digital Hand's value proposition so unique as an MSP? Because I certainly have thoughts on that, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about that.
I'd be interested in your thoughts as well. Other than the fact that we throw the annual Gasparilla Cybersecurity Summit and ask people to dress up like pirates, you know, uh, if I really had to come down to say what the differentiator it is its speed, flexibility, and execution. The speed part of it, it's getting there first. That's our tagline: get there first. And when you look at the industry, we're looking at assimilating massive amounts of data and actioning that data. Um, at a time when seconds matter. You can't afford to have an SLA that puts you into the next day or to flop the problem back on your customers. So speed and execution would be a differentiator. On the speed, it's enabled by some proprietary platforms and technologies that we find really cuts out a lot of the false positives. On the execution side, again, I mentioned our tenured folks, some of the smartest people in the industry. Um, you know, we're in an industry where a lot of people are new, a lot of companies are new. We have the tenure, we have the systems, we have 20 years of workflow evaluation and optimization. And in the end, we care. It's mission focused. We care about doing the right thing every single time for our clients.
What I
What,
would
what,
add to that,
what would you
Charlotte,
have answered? What would you have answered?
here's what I would have answered, Ed, for our viewers. Yes, Digital Hands does happen to be a client of mine, but what really makes you guys unique, it's the culture. It's when you deal with everyone, how everyone is such a team and how everyone has each other's back and how everyone has known everyone for such a long time. It just makes what you do so cohesive because you can see that people are committed to the mission because they've been there a while. They genuinely like each other. That's hard to find.
It's it's definitely something that we don't take for granted. And thank you for saying that.
Well, as a business owner who also cares a lot about culture, I know how important culture is and how hard that can be. So, again, kudos to what you're doing. And it really does make a difference because when you're on a project and you have team members who know how to collaborate and work together, they don't have to spend their time figuring that out. They can just get straight to the problem. So, the tagline of get there first also is really important in how they're even just executing on whatever the task at hand is.
Yeah, there's definitely, get there first from a threat perspective, but get there first, as you're saying, from an execution standpoint, and not, we call it high speed, low drag. And everybody really buys into that. And we have people that can be ambidextrous, if you will, and, write with their right hand and their left hand at the same time and fill in for folks and know when to bring in the right person. So yes, it's um, we're blessed with a culture that also extends to our clients. I mean, our clients feel like they're a part of us, and when they show up for our annual Gasparilla Cyber Summit, I really am grateful when they say, I really love working with your team, and feel like they're a part of my team. And so that extension into the client culture is important to us.
I'd have to borrow that high speed, low drag phrase. That's really cool. I like that one.
But you know what, Charlotte, I want to ask you actually a follow-up question because I've now been to Gasparilla twice, and it's such a unique event that's themed around Gasparilla and pirates. And maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the origins of that event, because companies are always looking for a way to uniquely provide value to customers and prospects. So talk to us a little bit about the origin of that event and why it's become so important to the company.
Well, this year I think this was our 11th annual Gasparilla Cybersecurity Event. And we didn't do it one of the pandemic years. We didn't do it in 2021, but we were actually one of the last events a lot of our customers attended, because it happened in January of 2020 before the shutdown around the March timeframe. But after if you go back 11 years, actually 12, what happened is we would gather together some of our key partners and customers and talk about the year ahead and what we were planning. It always happened in January, and so I'll never forget. It was the folks at McAfee said, "Well, why don't we come down for the event in January?" I said, "Well, why don't you come during Gasparilla?" And I had a friend that loaned us her boat, and that happened in 12 years ago, and we started having thought leadership, and the next year it got bigger, and the next year some other manufacturers that we work with came along, and then more customers and more customers, and then it became a word of mouth. And a couple of years ago, I was at RSA, and somebody screamed across the floor, "There's the pirate woman!" And so it's become kind of a tradition. It's an invitation only, but we wouldn't deny somebody who really wants to attend for thought leadership reasons. And there's no selling going on at that event. And what you're doing is we're bringing in the Secret Service, the FBI, you, Justin, to talk about the insurers. We're bringing in customers. We're bringing in case studies. We're bringing in new companies that are on bleeding edge, like Bryson Bort's organization at Skype. And we're really getting around the table to share all cameras off, kind of that whole idea of when it's sensitive information, shut the cameras off and let's have this conversation so that we can help solution it. And so 11 years in the making, 12 years in the making, and it has really exploded. And it's something that we look forward to every year. Every year we're exhausted before we put it on. I say, I'm not doing it next year. And then the day after, it culminates in a big invasion as part of there's an event that's over 100 years. It's 125 years, I think it is, event, which is the Gasparilla invasion of Tampa Bay. And so we jump on a boat, we come in, and we celebrate. And these relationships last for years. We see people that come in and they've been with 5 or 6 different companies over the course of 12 years, but they know each other, they trust each other. And it's kind of our give back, so that people know who to call. People know who to call from the Secret Service or the FBI. People know to call Baker Donaldson. People know. And these are relationships that just keep giving back, and it's our give back to say, "Hey, we're doing this with the intent of bringing a community together that cares." And and we don't allow other people to sponsor it. We sponsor it ourselves, and that keeps the people from opening up their jackets, saying, "Hey, look, I've got a line card I want to sell you," and it's a lot of fun.
A lot of the topics that are getting discussed these days are security regulations. And I would love to hear, how are you seeing these regulations around security impacting your customers and channel partners?
Well, it's interesting because that topic came up prolifically, not just this Gasparilla, but the one prior. And, I can honestly say that the topic of privacy, the topic of regulations, that's impacting everyone. And at one point, it was all about, what's my risk of getting fined? The regulations were, do I have sensitive information? Do I have PII? Do I have HIPAA information? And if breached, do I get fined? And am I going to roll the dice over it? Now, what's interesting about it is it's become not only a conversation about expense and risk, it's become these regulations have become a conversation about companies not being able to participate in the game if they don't comply. And so, that would kind of be around the trickle down conversation about the SEC rules. Even the smaller companies are coming into scope about this. So the regs are definitely driving behaviors that should be good hygiene in the first place, but it's kind of the hammer for which people say, I have to comply rather than roll the dice.
We see that often in the privacy space as well. I do think it's moving away from just that fine compliance concept and moving towards, I have to do this, especially in the B2B space. My customers are expecting this to happen. The consumer side, I think, is waking up to what's happening all the time. They keep getting all their data breach letters and wondering, how did this flyer come in here? Why is this company sharing my information, using it in ways I didn't expect? But it all takes time to get there.
So, Charlotte, speaking specifically about the SEC cyber rules, why don't you get out your pirate crystal ball a little bit and talk to us a little bit about what you are expecting to see in the next year about this trickle down effect? Because you and I both agree that privately held companies who have these publicly traded customers just don't appreciate what's coming their way from a requirement standpoint for security from their publicly traded customers. So maybe you could share a little bit about what you think you're going to see happen here over the next year or two.
Well, having been in this industry for so long, we've been subject to them in order to do business with the large enterprises that we do business with. And so having things like, ISO, PCI, SOC 2, those kind of things, we've been, because of the business we're in, we've been on that treadmill for over a decade. What prior to what happened in I think it was December with the SEC rules, a lot of companies felt like if they weren't publicly traded, regardless of size, some of these things didn't apply to them. So we were forced at an early stage to start getting these. And I'll never forget, it was a large insurance company that was our client. And they said, can you get the PCI compliance? And we said, well, we don't need it because we're not processing, credit cards. We're not looking at that information. And they said, we understand, but if you would please get this because it helps us with our regulators. And so we did it. And we were pressured at the time because of what we do for a living. You fast forward to today, still, companies think that this SEC ruling that happened in December really hasn't gotten out there for a major source of discussion yet. And I mean, even at Gasparilla, some of our publicly traded companies didn't realize the downstream effect of the SEC ruling on some of their supply chain members. And, when you think about when it's going to impact, you asked me the crystal ball question. A lot of people since December have not been up for their renewal on their annual contracts as a supply chain member to larger publicly traded companies. And so when they come up for renewal, they're going to see a whole different set of questionnaires. You can, for example, they're going to say, hey, what kind of certifications do you have? And if they say none, it's okay, then fill out these questionnaires for us. And the questionnaires are pretty onerous. I mean, you might as well go through the certification process because of the amount of information that's needed. And I think what's going to happen is if we look, this is March, so the reg has only been out there and is still being disseminated and understood in the last 2 months. But between now and December, using a crystal ball, all these companies that are up for renewals on their annual contracts are going to be scrambling for how do I comply with this? And, I think that's where you really got to understand, these companies have to understand that that's more than just going on the internet and downloading a privacy policy or a policy on, what you do with your data. You've got to actually prove that you do it. And with the privacy laws that are, vary by state, you need some help. I mean, even we use you, Justin, at Baker Donaldson to say, hey, which ones do we need to comply with and what are our notices if we are breached and those kind of things. This is not a DIY type of scenario. So I do think that especially companies that are not publicly traded, that are in the supply chain doing business with publicly traded companies, are in for an awakening that happened in December that they don't see coming yet.
That's interesting, Charlotte, because when I get asked that question, the tack that I take is I don't think these privately held companies are going to realize that buried in their security addendum they have to sign is if they do have a breach, the publicly traded company is going to be like, this is all the information you're going to give us because we have to decide if we have to disclose this. And oh, by the way, any kind of public pronouncements, we'll be the ones doing it. You'll have little say in it, and it'll allow them to throw them under the bus and could cause the privately held company to be in violation of all their other contracts. And unless you understand what that means, I don't think they realize should they have a breach, their entire breach response could get hijacked by the publicly traded company because that's what they agreed to in these new, more onerous security addendums.
Yeah, not only would the companies need to have expert advice for setting up an incident response scenario, communication scenario, even publishing their own policies, they're going to need to have somebody look at those addendums that they're signing because it is buried language and it does look generic. And then when you really think about it, some of the, we had a conversation with a few companies where we said, what would happen in the event? And we painted out a scenario like this. And they said it'd be lights out. And these were not minor companies that would say it would be lights out. These were not startup companies. These were established companies in the SaaS arena. And it is something to be concerned about. And, with all the noise that goes on in the security industry and the privacy industry, someone needs to hold up the beacon to say, do you realize this is coming?
Well, kind of changing tact a little bit, Charlotte, as a business owner, you provide benefits to your employees because that's what you do to have the culture that you have. And love if you could share the story about how privacy concerns for your employees impacted features relating to your company healthcare plan.
Yeah, that's one that really lights me up. Without naming names, recently we switched healthcare plans, and we had been with one provider. We have a really stellar. We use a very stellar, like top tier brokerage firm to negotiate the benefits for us, and so we shopped among multiple providers, carriers, if you will. And we chose one for many reasons, but one of the reasons we didn't choose it is because of a couple of bells and whistles. In the end, it came out to be the price of the plan and the richness of the plan for our constituents. And in this particular scenario, there's a little side benefit, and the side benefit that was described to HR here was that, hey, did we recognize that we've got these funds available? And so we had it with the previous carrier, and the previous carrier set aside funds for us to do health events for our employees, and we would spend it on things that delighted them but got them moving, doing walking marathons and things like that, and had competitions with prizes. And this particular carrier said, we have a program where you earn dollars. And these are like fictitious dollars. And what they'll do is we've got the portal set up. They'll go into the portal, they'll register. And what we'll do is we'll start rewarding them for good behavior that is great for their health. And it sounded like a great idea. It did not go to our CIO or to me to think about, privacy issues, et cetera, because it just seemed to be part of a normal plan. And so HR was pretty excited about it, rolled it out. And of course, I'm on the plan. So I thought, I'm going to check this out. And the first thing I did when I went to see about enrollment is it said, you need to click on the privacy policy. Now, most consumers are not going to click on the privacy policy and read a 40-page document. But the first thing I did was say, well, what am I giving up here? So for dollars, let's just call it a couple dollars, I wanted to know if the juice was worth the squeeze. And I started looking at what kind of information I'm giving up. Well, before I got into the actual doing of the site and putting in the information, I see that the statement was that I am freely giving the information. The information is sensitive information. The carrier has affiliates that they can give it to and partners that they can give it to, and basically the world that they can give it to. And they have no responsibility for the protection of the privacy of that data. And they have, in the event of a breach, they have no liability. And I have no recourse as the consumer. And furthermore, where it goes and how it's used after I put it in is not going to be governed by them. And, ta-da. And so that really, the privacy policy, I downloaded, I'm like, read this, and it just, it really is surprising. And so I can guarantee you anybody that would have clicked on that would have just been like your Apple phone, I agree, because if I want the dollars, I need to do it. So then I said, okay, I'm going to agree to this, and I'm going to start going into the website. And some of the information it asked was very shocking. That it was medical information. It was information about your prescriptions. It was information about um, uh, things in family history, for example. And I thought that's interesting. So they're collecting this information, and so I said, why would somebody want to do this? Why would they be collecting this kind of information, disclaiming any kind of privacy around it? And what is the benefit? Well, the benefit is that you, the consumer, are the product. I mean, they're collecting information in order to sell, in order to market. And it was really shocking to me that if you think about how that trickled in, it's that here is private information being gathered, and an employer that said, here's your healthcare program. And they've got this cute little program on the side with these dollars that you can then spend to buy things like a pedometer. And it's done in a competitive way to say, hey, I get points. It's kind of a gaming way. And so you look at reputable companies, your employer, a large top tier healthcare company, but what you're not thinking about as a consumer is where's that data going? And you didn't read the privacy policy. So it really concerned me that how that came into our organization. And it's no different, by the way, if you've ever gone to the doctor's office. This is really amazing to me. And I had several bouts of COVID, and so heart doctor, lung doctor, et cetera. Even my dermatologist uses this one system that, again, I won't name. But you think you're using it for a check-in. You're using it to check in and ease your check-in. Nobody likes better than to pull up to your doctor's office, not have to wait, not to put in a credit card, and just fly through the process. At the end of that, it's the same thing. It's this system marketing to you, gathering information, asking you questions, and then selling the information and bringing partners into it. And I think, are the doctor's offices getting a free check-in system in exchange for saying, as long as the consumer says yes to it, you can market to my consumers? And do they know it? Are they aware of it? Because once again, you're not clicking on that privacy policy. So that whole thing about being an employer and thinking about the privacy of your employees or even your customers, people aren't reading the privacy policies and what they're putting at risk. And you walk a fine line between being big brother to be protective and actually saying, hey, are you reading what you're giving away? And I'm going to be surprised if we don't see more legislation coming down about the responsibility of people giving away that information that are the conduits for it.
Well, Charlotte, I think your story brings up a few points that come to mind for me. One of them is most people aren't reading that privacy notice, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, it's really long, it's hard, it's not easy to read. And so when companies don't make them even easy to read, no one's going to want to read them. I would hope that we'd move to people in the privacy space have talked for a long time around the nutrition label concept, but even just visually appealing, where it's easy to read, that check-in process, we've experienced the same one. We'll let it remain nameless. And my very big challenge with it is it's incredibly deceiving. It's a massive dark pattern because that very last page looks like a HIPAA consent, and it's not. I mean, it has consent, it has health related, and you have to really read the fine print in a very small type, no spacing, no pictures, no visual, no bolding, nothing, just a long, long document. And you have to really read it. And most people just, they don't understand, or they think, well, all the forms are all consent. They're just using the software program. Of course, it's the doctor's office. So everything there must be HIPAA compliant and safe. I should check the box. Much like how in the first scenario with the insurance carrier, well, it's a big insurance carrier. Surely it's a big company. They've done what they're supposed to. And people just trust because of who it is. And I think that element of trust and not realizing, no, actually, I shouldn't necessarily trust them. And it's really hard to get to the information because of how it's presented. For me, those are the two really big reasons why we have this conundrum and companies are continuing to do these practices and get away with them. I am hopeful that there's enough practitioners out there like us who are trying to get companies to think about it first and say, if you want to do this, then do it upright, do it the right way. Be upfront about what's actually happening and educate people and explain, here's the benefit. You get this really awesome pedometer and all kinds of really cool little benefits. You also have to share all this information to be able to do it. I mean,
And
when
is
you
it worth
shared
it?
your story, the first thing that comes to mind is my health activities can be rewarded on their own. I shouldn't also have to go backwards and present who I am health wise to also get the benefit. To me, that's just being greedy with wanting more information.
Well, who you are, giving that information allows them to then market to you. Would you be interested in this program? Would you be interested in that program? It would, it gives them a fuller picture so that the holder of the data can go out to other partners and say, it's down to the basics of marketing qualified leads. They're selling marketing qualified leads of a highly curated audience with attributes that customers themselves have verified. The consumers have verified it. It's not speculative data. And then it's, you think about, how companies market. They look at the price per marketing qualified lead, MQL. That jacks the price up. And so they can sell the data. And it just, that nutrition label concept really is interesting because, if you did have that nutrition label concept that you're talking about, it would say, does this company have affiliates that yes. Are they selling the data? Yes. Are they collecting the following types of data from you? Yes, yes, no, 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 no. What are you getting? On average, you're getting a $10 coupon. And what are you giving? You're giving all this information. And then, kind of like the checkbox, is it worth it? At the end of that nutrition label. But you're right about that one particular doctor's check-in that probably half America is seeing is that disguised HIPAA form really is shocking. And I'm surprised somebody hasn't come down on that already.
I know. We're going to keep talking about it forever, but we won't. We might talk about some other things.
Yeah. So Charlotte, if you're at a cocktail party, maybe after Gasparilla, and someone comes up to you and say, hey, Charlotte, what might be your best security tip? What would you share with our audience?
Well, I assume the cocktail party isn't the day of Gasparilla, so sometime thereafter. Yeah, because I'm not sure what the answer would be on that day. Lots of fun. Well, ironically, the number one tip that I'd have is, to an organization is you've got to have multi-factor authentication. And, that is something that has been touted for years and years. And there's been a big push in the last couple of years, but you'd be surprised, technology companies, they have about an 87% adoption rate just because of who they are. But when you look at finance and banking, the adoption rate on MFA is about 60%. Healthcare and pharma, it's far less. It's in the 50s. Government's in the 40s. The retail is retail's abysmal because, a lot of retailers they don't have the profit margins to afford some of this. I don't want to say they're cheap, but they've got to make survival decisions. And they're in they're just bumping up around a 40% adoption rate. And the reason that's important is this is a day and an era where passwords just don't cut it. And, that would be my number one tip. Besides MFA, which, again, seems obvious, yet adoption isn't there. Really, I think what's important is that, we're in an environment where you can't afford to fix everything. And, you could spend all the company profits, or you could spend all the company revenue on having a great security program. And it's not reasonable. So if you're really going to think about how to grow along the maturity journey, I think you need to have a roadmap, and that roadmap would say, here's, and forget the point solutions. One of the things that gets very confusing in the industry is looking at what everybody does. If you go to RSA, there's a ton of companies, and it's called the Hall of Smoke and Mirrors. You go in there, and everybody talks about what they do, and you really think about it, they do 5 things. And, it's where do you fit in the buckets? And so the tip would be, stop looking at point solutions. Look at where you are in the security maturity journey. Get a scorecard on yourself. Do it through a virtual CISO service. We offer those, or get a consultant to come in, and get whoever your trusted network is to come in, give you a scorecard, give you a roadmap, and help you so that you look at this between now and the end of, say, 3 years or 4 years. And that way you can budget appropriately. And that way you're not getting bombarded with information about point solutions. You've got a holistic way of looking at it, and then you bring in the solutions as you need it. Right now, there's just too much technology chasing some fundamental problems that need to be shored up, and technology is not always the answer to the problem.
When you are not helping solve client problems and being the CEO of Digital Hands, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, over the last 5 years, my time has been spent as passionately dedicating time to the Board of Trustees for the University of Tampa. So I will say that what I've done for fun outside of my Digital Hands job has really been working with the University of Tampa and their governance. And I'm turning the gavel over in May. This last year has been a pretty intense year of selecting a new president for the university. It's an amazing university that, their programs are second to none, and they've got over 11,000 students. So we're going to be getting a new president, and I'm going to be exiting the chair role and turning the gavel over. And so while I have 2 years as immediate past chair, I'm turning my attention to new chapters, and I have yet to figure out what that is. I've got until this summer, but my heartstrings are really with struggling veterans and the homeless, and so we'll see what the next chapter brings. I think if I had to get out of the dimension of work and kind of volunteer stuff, I'm thinking about horses. So maybe in a new equestrian pursuit, but yeah.
Well, our kiddos over here love horses. We have lots of horse books if you ever would like to read any.
Yeah, better than the privacy policies.
There you go. She'll quote you those too. So, Charlotte, where can people connect with you and learn more?
The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. To learn more, I can say that going to our website, taking a look, we're getting ready to revamp it, but going there now will get you a rough approximation of what we do. And there's some links on there to click, and we'll get the right folks to you. But LinkedIn is probably the best place.
Wonderful. Justin, any parting words?
The website is digitalhands.com. It's that simple.
Wonderful. Parting words.
Parting words.
Mr. Pirate.
Digital Hands, get there first.
Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us today. Packed episode with all kinds of goodies.
Thanks. Really appreciate being with you guys.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.